Writers often use narrative to support argument, and this comes in three different forms. Sometimes the story begins, followed by an argument. Other times, the story begins, the argument comes, and then we return to the narrative or the story. And finally, last, there's sometimes a back and forth, where the story is sandwiched in between an argument. Let's take a look at what a back and forth narrative argument looks like in Jillian Weise' Why I Own a Gun.
Weiss's essay begins with a story about graduate school, a time that a professor made her feel vulnerable and small. From that story, she shifts into an argument about women and gun ownership. Specifically, she takes up the claims of her liberal colleagues who tend to be anti-gun ownership. The essay then shifts back into narrative. We get the story of Weise in the motel room. She calls the police after hearing a noise at the door, and when the police finally do show up, it turns out that there was a stalker at the window. From here, she shifts again back into her argument about women and gun ownership. We get another shift, this time a flashback in time, and Weise gives us the story of an attempted robbery that occurred at her father's pharmacy. From this anecdote, the writer then shifts back into her argument about why women should own guns. The essay ends with two final short narratives. Weise gives us the story of her current situation and the stalker, and she also returns to the past one final time and gives us a description of the gun permit class when she first obtained her gun carry permit. We can think of Weiss's essay structure as follows. We begin with a narrative, then move into argument. We move into a different narrative, and then again return to argument. Narrative again, argument, and finally narrative. Each of the stories that Weise includes are considered anecdotes, and these anecdotes help to support the general argument that she is making that women should be gun owners. Each story shows Weise in a vulnerable situation, one that she believes owning a gun would make her feel safer in. Let's take a look at an example from the essay. This anecdote appears in paragraph 4 of Weiss's Why I Own a Gun. She writes, "I called the front desk. Nobody answered. The man jiggled the doorknob. I called the police. It was a small town, and there had been a fatal traffic accident nearby. The police were busy. I thought about calling random numbers in the phone book. I thought about calling for pizza and being rescued. I thought about calling my mom. I thought about the self-protection available to me. A coat hanger, a hairdryer, and a lamp. 30 minutes passed, and the man came back and banged on the door some more. Why had he picked my door? Had he seen me earlier in the day? Did he think of me as an easy target? An hour later, the police arrived. I packed my things and put them into my car. I was going to a bigger town, a nicer hotel with inside corridors. Sorry, I was scared, I said to the police. You were right to be scared, one of them said. He pointed his flashlight to the window of my hotel room. The man had ejaculated on it. When I got home, I asked my dad to buy me a gun." This anecdote really emphasizes the vulnerability and the smallness that Weise felt. Therefore, it effectively supports her argument that women should be gun owners. As you read Weiss's essay, look for the places where she shifts back and forth between anecdote and argument. And in your own writing, think about the ways that you can use your stories that others have told you, or stories that you have heard in the news or from other sources to support the arguments that you make.